Welcome to Raising Daughters, the podcast that helps parents learn the best ways to support their daughters as they navigate the high levels of stress, anxiety, pressure, and uncertainty so pervasive in our culture today. Dr. Tim Jordan is a developmental and behavioral pediatrician who has specialized in counseling girls for over 30 years and sheds light on the realities of today's young women in all facets of their lives. This is your opportunity to learn how to better support your daughters, making them feel safe, secure, and truly loved in the midst of life's ups and downs. Here is your host, Dr. Tim.
Hello, friends. Thanks for stopping back again here at Raising Daughters to listen in, to get some education, some awareness, some skills, some tools about what's going on for girls today, and also how to support them. Oh, I've been doing these podcasts for, I think, 6 or 7 years. This is number 268. You've heard me off and on railing about all the pressure on girls today about education and getting into the perfect college, getting to the top college and straight A's and all that stuff. And so instead of me ranting and raving again, I thought I would have a guest on who actually knows what she's talking about. So I invited Dr. Pamela Ellis to come on, and she has a service, which she will talk about in just a moment. She has a service to support parents and their teens, to find the best college without breaking the bank, basically. Did I say that right, Dr. Ellis?
Yes, you did. That's fine.
And you have I want to hear your story about how you got to where you are, but you spent time at Stanford and Dartmouth and got your PhD in education, I believe, at Stanford. Mm-hmm. So you've been to some top colleges, and so you have a lot of experience about what that probably feels like.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much, Tim, for having me on your show. And it was a little bit intimidating for sure, given my line of work, but your message is very much in line with my own approach and beliefs in terms of how to shepherd girls through this process, knowing that oftentimes they do have this notion of perfect and what's going to be the perfect college. And many of the approaches in terms of how we go about supporting them really helps them with centering themselves in the process as opposed to centering the colleges. And I know from experience of being at selective colleges what that's about. But at the same time, in my work over the years, I've been able to experience what it's like at other colleges as well, and know that there are dozens of colleges that are a right fit for girls that are out there. And it's not about one college. And when you focus on one college, that is what causes that stress, that anxiety, and this whole notion of perfect that really, I think, really causes the whole college admissions process to be so burdensome and not as enjoyable as I see it to be and want it to be for the girls and their parents.
I want to dive into all of that. That's awesome. But before we unpack all that, I first want to ask you, I'm guessing that when you were 18 and leaving high school, you didn't think to yourself, someday, I'm not sure how old you are, 30 years of age, I'm going to be supporting men and women with the college process. I'm sure that wasn't your plan. So how did you meander your way to this?
Yeah, not at all. When I graduated high school, I had no idea what I was getting into. And I dreamed being a physician, and I was going to major in physics and all of those things. And none of those things came to bear. But nevertheless, really, it was when I became a mom that this journey, I feel, was really crystallized. I think I was always on a path to helping students, helping parents around education, because people, I don't know why, would often ask me questions about education. And one of my dear friends that I grew up with would often ask me questions about education. And so it was probably something that was already natural for me. But when I became a mom, Tim, that's when I became so obsessed with schooling and trying to figure out how am I going to help my kids through this? Because I know that, especially having children of color, that it was going to be a challenging experience for them, regardless of my background and having gone to college and graduate school. And so, with helping them, that's really what drove me to go back to Stanford and get my doctorate degree. And just thinking about how do I help my kids? And it wasn't until some parents asked me specifically about helping them with finding the right summer programs and the right high schools that their kids could attend that I really launched my business as it is today. And when they asked me, I basically went back to my dissertation work and put together a program based on my dissertation work. That's how I got into this.
Here you are.
It's totally different, from what I would have anticipated coming out of high school, even coming out of graduate school, because graduate school for me was so much about the research, and I was really trained to go into academia, not to start my own business.
We're talking to Dr. Pamela Ellis. She owns a company called Compass College Advisory. So she helps men and women go through the process and doing it in a way that is healthy. And I guess we can start the beginning with young people. When I have young girls who are in high school in my counseling practice a lot of times, or my retreats and things, I'll ask them what they're going to do after high school. I act kind of dumb.
Yeah.
And they all don't go to college, but many of them do. And they'll look at me like I'm an idiot. And they're like, well, I'm going to college. And I ask them, why are you going to college? And then it gets interesting. I'm sure you find the same thing, because
I do.
I don't think anybody's ever asked them, why do you want to go, as opposed to what your parents want, what the educational system wants, everybody in your school is going, all that. So I'm guessing you face that too.
Yes, I do. And that is the first question that we have for students is their why. And we've been collecting this data over the last 13, 14 years. And what I started out with was a survey that had about 13 different reasons for why they want to go to college. And in the last few years, I've seen that evolve, especially. There's now more of an interest in career prep, like going for career reasons. And another top one, Tim, is actually independence. And I think that increased over the last few years with kids being at home through COVID and parents being a little bit more smothering, as I've seen. And I understand that in terms of the worry about your children. And so that's been really a top reason in their why. And it comes up in my initial meeting with families, and I ask them about it when we first meet. What is their why for going to college? Because their why will determine everything else in terms of how they engage at school, the classes that they're taking, the activities they participate in, especially their list. And so it's really important. And so many times, just like you, I hear that, oh, I never thought about that before, or my parents always told me I would go to college. And I ask the parents the same thing, and I want them to articulate that in the presence of their child, because I know for many of them, they've never had that conversation before about the why, because the parents have always drilled into them, you're going to college.
You're going.
And that's it, right? But I tell them, when you know your why, and when you have a why, that changes everything.
How do you support those young people? Because you mentioned it earlier. I find this too, that they have somehow swallowed this myth that says there's one perfect school for you and it needs to be a top college. And if you don't get this top college, then your whole life will unravel in front of you. How do you get kids beyond that?
So one of the things that I talk about, I would say 3 key tenets in terms of our approach and what I share with them in our initial meeting. So this is like the meeting that determines if we're even a fit to work together. And one of them is what their why is and knowing their why. And the second one is around them owning the process. And then the third thing that's really important that I talk about with students and want them to know about our approach is that there is no one college for them. And the way that we are guiding them to those colleges is based on fit. And we have 5 factors of fit that we're focused on. And what I do, Tim, is when we're talking about building that college list, I give them a guide sheet on how to research the colleges. And that guide sheet is based on our 5 factors of fit. You would be surprised what students learn about what they want and what they don't want in a college when they go through that kind of process for figuring it out. And we start with the pretty organic list. I just said, okay, I'm going to choose 5 random colleges that are really different from each other based on your personality profile. So that's how I started. And so I don't give them very selective colleges to start with, because I just want them to at least be exposed to some colleges that maybe they haven't even heard of before. But the fact that it's tied in with their personality, I think opens them up to consider it. And so when they look at these colleges, though, they start to see some things that they hadn't thought about before. And what I tell them is, I know you have these other colleges that you're interested in. I want you to also add that college to your list and use the same guide sheet to research and learn about that college. What ends up happening is that they find out that they really didn't know that college. They knew the name, but they really didn't know as much about it at all.
Yeah.
And I say, I want you to know these things because this is what you're going to be writing in your essay. This is how you're going to make the most of your visit. And when they start to see that college using that guide sheet, it really makes them more aware. And I find that students are more apt to remove a college than still applying to it only because of the brand name. Because I really want to get them away from that surface thinking about this being a perfect college because of the brand name. And so just once I can disabuse them of that whole notion, that really opens things up. And it doesn't mean that they won't have any selective colleges. They may have 1 or 2, but I talk about it in terms of, let's look at it as far as being a third of your list, but not all of your list being selective colleges. So that kind of helps dispel it.
I'm guessing that also relieves a lot of pressure on them, because if you're so overly focused on it's got to be this, it's this college or top college or bust, there's so much pressure involved because you're not going to get into everywhere, number one, but also because you're missing the point. So I'm guessing you're finding with those students get more empowerment. That was one of your words, I think. Ownership, I think is what you said.
Yeah.
It's a huge release for them, a stress release.
It is. And we open up our meetings with a gratitude practice as a way to also help them just relieve some stress. Because I know they come into the meetings with stress already just from school and other things they're involved in. But I mean, just a mindful practice, like talking about gratitude and introducing our meeting in such a calming way, it helps to reduce that stress. And gratitude also builds resilience. And I tell them, those are the 2 things that are going to serve you well with this process. And it's not about this craziness of taking every test and taking them 3 and 4 times. It's like, whew, that's for the birds. You don't want to do that. And I'd say to them, I want you to enjoy high school, because I know I didn't like my high school experience. It was crazy. I want their parents to enjoy those years as well before their kid goes away to college. And as much as I can do to debunk myths and to have a guided process that empowers them and gives them a sense of calm and a peace of mind, it serves them well, much better, and their results are going to be better.
We're talking to Dr. Pamela Ellis. She owns a company called Compass College Advisory, and she helps high schoolers get ready for college and the whole process of picking a college, picking a good college, a good fit. I'm guessing there's a lot of parents who are listening to this right now who are saying, I wish my kid had one college down their list because they're not doing anything. They're procrastinating, all that. So how do you approach those young people to make sure they stay on track?
I can share how I approach it, and it's going to be harder for parents to do the same. And I say that not to minimize their role or value, but kids hear things differently from a third party than they do from their parents. And so I do have kids, of course, that are procrastinators. And I really do try to give them a roadmap of where we're going, and also giving it in bite sizes helps them also to feel that sense of accomplishment with getting something done. And I just think that they are responding differently to me because I'm not their parent. And so I know for my own kids, it's the same way. They don't really listen to me, but they'll listen to somebody else.
And then you check in with them every couple of weeks, don't you?
I do. It's at least usually on a 3-week basis.
Oh, 3 weeks.
And they get reminders. They have assignments in between. And I know some of them are finishing it right before the meeting. And that's okay, because once we meet, they have it done. And I don't care if they did it right beforehand.
Yeah.
So, I think it's really just giving them that guidance of where we're going. And then just like eating that elephant one bite at a time, that helps with giving them that sense of accomplishment so that they do keep going.
There's also the whole issue of money. And I'm just curious, I see some young people who are going to or want to go to or have just graduated from a university that may have cost them $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year. They're over $100,000 in debt, and they have a sociology major. But they had to go to this prestigious, you call it selective college that was really, really expensive. I'm not saying it's wrong, but to be in $150,000 in debt and getting a psychology degree, I'm just wondering how you approach that part.
I'm not usually involved with a lot of that, quite frankly, because where I see the biggest numbers in terms of debt is with for-profits. And I do not recommend any for-profit colleges at all to my students. And for the most part, if students aren't getting any financial aid or their parents have chosen to apply early decision, they're usually not taking out any debt. Their parents are covering that. And so where my role comes in from a financial standpoint is that I do work very keenly on helping students with finding the right fit colleges. And so with that being said, they can still get money for college, even if they don't qualify for any financial aid. And then it's their family's decision if they end up going to a college where they do pay out of pocket. And so we do have the conversation around loans, and we do have the conversation around the different types of aid. And I do review their offer letters to discuss that as well. And I do work with them on negotiating their offers. But for the most part, the families that I work with aren't taking out a lot of significant debt. They're either getting some monies, and the debt that they do take out is minimal at best. And I did have a parent that took out a big parent loan. but it was more because it was an investment choice. It's like, do I spend my money or borrow the money at this low rate and then keep my money and invest it and then just pay it off once their child graduates? I mean, which is a very different model for it. So I think it's just, I'm not seeing that with students that I'm working with. So it's a little bit different. And I, quite frankly, focus on the college fit because most of the families I work with do not qualify for need-based aid, but I still want them to be able to get some monies. And so if I focus on finding the right colleges and helping their kids with applying to those colleges that are a good fit, then they have the best chance of admissions and they have the best chance of getting scholarships without their parents, having to qualify for it.
My guest today is Dr. Pamela Ellis. She owns a company called Compass College Advisory. We'll give out the website for that so you can find it. I want you to let our parents know who are listening to this, just your process. Like, when would you start this process? I noticed on your website you have a customer care specialist, you have a college counselor / athletic recruiting specialist, an essay specialist. There's lots of tools, there's lots of resources. When should people start their process and how does that look?
The best time is 10th grade. And it's really now as a sophomore that would be optimal in terms of starting with us and even really seriously thinking about this process and what it entails. And sophomore year is just such, I think, a challenging year for students because they're not the new kid at school and they're not necessarily completely into the list building phase of the process. And so it's a great time for them to really get to know what they want to do and think about what their interests are without the pressure of, I need to be looking at colleges right now. Because we don't really talk about colleges in sophomore year. It's all about those assessments and interest inventories to really help the student build their own self-awareness and start to develop that confidence around what they want. They do some career exploration through summer programs. We do talk about test planning for junior year. And then in junior year is when we really get into the colleges and start building that list. And so 10th grade is an optimal time.
And then by the time they're seniors, what do your services and your resources look like? Typically, I know there's all different kinds of kids and all needs, but in general,
in senior year, it's really around working with them on their essays and crafting strong essays that are going to be compelling and support their success with admissions.
Do you find that in general that they're excited about it? I guess I'm asking this question because I see a lot of high school seniors, especially right now, because we're in the winter in their second semester, who are freaked out. They're scared. They're anxious. There's a lot of uncertainty. They get paralyzed because they have all the kinds of mixed feelings. I'm just wondering how you help them cope with all of that.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I do. And I'm very intentional about continuing to meet with my seniors in January, February, and March. In my meetings with them this month, it's been around recognizing the symptoms of senioritis and talking about that, because that's what I see most in this time of year is they finish their applications and now they starting to procrastinate. Maybe they're not enjoying their studies as much anymore. Maybe they cut class, things like that. And so just talking with them about those symptoms, also talking with them about what do you do to overcome it? And the biggest thing is having a schedule, keeping routines, and also celebrating, still having fun and not seeing it as, woe is me, because I haven't heard back from the colleges kind of thing. And so we talk very directly about that. And so even giving them those suggestions around how to overcome it when they recognize it, that helps them through this time. And the other thing that I talk with them about in this winter period is repurposing their essays and repurposing their essays to apply for any scholarships that they find or that are offered in their local area. And that's a way to combat some of that, worry around what's going to happen, because it gives them a sense of more control over the process.
I run a group for high school girls every 2 weeks, and we met a week ago and have 9 girls this semester, and 5 of them are seniors. And they were all like, I don't even want to go to school. I hate it. I'm so bored. I just want to leave, blah, blah, all that, just like you're talking about. So you said helping them remain on schedule and all that, but I'm curious to give me some more specifics so I can talk to my group this Tuesday.
Well, something, Tim, I'm going to pull up my slide and I'll tell you. I actually also, when we were talking about it, got suggestions from them as well. And so I'll have to share with you those when I go back to the recording. But yeah, I put together a slide deck and I'm going to pull it up now and I'll tell you what those suggestions were. I gave them 3 for overcoming senioritis. And here we go. One of them was keeping the end goal in mind, in terms of if they want to graduate with honors or if they're excited for graduating with their friends, whatever that end goal is for them this school year. And we do talk about goals even at the beginning of the year. They set goals for the year. The second one was not depriving themselves of fun. And so still enjoying time with friends this year. And then the third one was staying organized and on schedule. And then it was asking them what would they add as another way that they can overcome senioritis. Many of them were just grateful to even talk about what the symptoms were, because they hadn't really thought about it in that regard. They just knew that they were feeling a little blah.
I think, and a lot of them, I think, what I found in the group was their parents basically just crab at them. You got to get this done. You got to get that done. You got to finish strong, blah, blah, blah. And they don't really listen to and kind of commiserate with. It is hard to be a second semester senior because your stuff is all in. You have one foot in the future and one foot still in the past. It is hard.
It is. And it's a lot of worry around what the decision outcome will be, because they hear things from their friends. So they've heard that so-and-so in their class who has this kind of score or this kind of grade didn't get into a college. And that then heightens their anxiety, like, oh my God, if they didn't get in, I'm not going to get in either. The other thing too is if they have received like a deferral notice, then that may have them a little concerned. And that's why I really do encourage students to apply to maybe 2 or 3 early action colleges. And my hope with that is that there will be one college at least that they've heard back from in December that said yes to them. Because when they start hearing about other kids, it kind of helps allay some of their fears, because they know that, yes, they have gotten into that one. And that's something that really, I think, makes a difference for this time period. It's just kind of knowing that there's that one college that you have been admitted to.
Yeah.
And
it's one you like. So it's not like, oh, I got to go there. It's like, okay, I can go there.
Exactly. And a lot of things I start talking about at the beginning of the year, because I know that around this time, what they're going to be feeling. And so what I share with them over and over when we are about to start the applications is I say, hey, if you have 8 colleges on your list, I want all 8 of them to be your number one, such that if this is the only college you're admitted to, you're going to be excited to go. And that helps them with pairing the list. And again, we're still keeping it in those buckets. I don't want all 8 to be less
Ivy
than a
League.
3% chance of admission,
Yeah.
And that's a good place to be because then, yes, like you said, when you have that one letter, you're excited for it. You're happy because it's like, yeah, I sure could go to this college.
My guest today is Dr. Pamela Ellis, who owns a company called Compass College Advisory. And she's giving us lots of good information about how to support your high schoolers with the whole college process. I have one more question if you have another minute. You said before they look around at their peers. The other thing I noticed that creates a lot of pressure within them is that they look at their peers, and what they'll say to me is, all my peers know what they want to do. They know what their major is.
Yes.
They already know that, and I don't know what I want, so I'm behind, and they get all freaked out. And I try my best to say, it doesn't matter what they think now. Yeah. Most people, when they're 18, 20, 22, 25, haven't found their thing yet. So it's okay.
Yes, and it is okay. Oftentimes, Tim, when parents start working with us, that's one of their key concerns that they talk about. The first one is, my kid doesn't know what they want to do. And I'm just like, something, that's completely fine. You don't have to know what you want to do at this point. And there are so many colleges that are going to embrace you, even as an undecided major. And I do not want them to feel boxed in any way. And when we do the assessments and interest inventories, I talk about look at all of these great things you could do because there's strengths for you based on your personality, based on whatever this inventory was gathering. And we talk about summer programs. I do curate a list of summer programs for them to explore an area. And when they explore an area, that gives them a chance to see if they like it or not, which is great. And it's the same for my juniors. I have juniors who certainly don't know what they want to do. And I just say, something, that's still completely fine. Because when we're looking at these colleges, I want you to make sure you can see yourself in terms of kind of how they set up their courses and their programs, that as an undecided major, that you can still explore and figure out what you want to do when you get there. And just having that conversation and reinforcing it, and then giving them an opportunity to learn about a particular field, that helps a great deal. And I pretty much know which colleges are going to ask them or force them to have a major. And if one of those colleges is on their list in junior year, I do talk about it. I just say, frankly, hey, for this university, you really do need to know a specific major. And I've had students who would be so excited about certain colleges and they end up not applying because they do not know their first and second choice major and they can't commit to it. So they can't write the application essay. And so just kind of knowing that while they're working on the list, I can give them a heads up about it and also help them when they go on to do their visits, what questions to ask if they are undecided, and getting a sense for, do students have a major and a minor, and how do they figure that out? Do they have advisors who help them with that? So just asking some of those questions on the visit can allay some of those worries. But I always say, you do not have to know. You do not have to know it all. I thought I knew it all as a physics major.
We all knew it all.
I graduated in linguistics.
Yeah. We all knew it all when we were 18.
Yes, right? We did. We did.
I want every young person, when they're going through this whole college process, I want them to enjoy the process. It's an adventure. I want them to be excited. It's the next leg of their journey, as opposed to being stressed out and getting paralyzed and all that. So I'm so glad that we have Dr. Pamela Ellis in the world and her company, Compass College Advisory, to hold their hands through the whole process. So how can people get a hold of you and to see what your services are?
Oh my goodness. They can connect with me on LinkedIn, Dr. Pamela Ellis, or they can check out our website at Compass College Advisory. And if they already know that they want to talk with me and meet us, they can go to readyforcalm.com. That's the place.
Ready for calm?
Calm, CALM.
Oh, calm.com.
Calm. So our proprietary framework is
Got
called
you.
Keep Calm.
Got you.
Yes.
So for those of you parents who are jogging right now and listening to this, by the way, I found through this podcast company who's helping us that the
Yeah.
number one way people are listening to my podcast is on their watch. It's not
Really?
their computer, it's not their phone, it's their watch. So if you're jogging right now, you're on a treadmill, you're driving the car, you can't write this down. I always will put these links in my show notes. So when you go home, just go to drtimjordan.com and there's all these ways to get a hold of Dr. Pamela Ellis. Thank you so much for your time today. And thank you so much for what you're doing.
Yeah.
There's such a need to help young people in a more calm, purposeful way go through this process.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you so much for all that you do. Thank you.